Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people,
which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you, and we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello, and welcome back to the Special Needs Mom podcast. Today, at the time that I'm recording this introduction, was a very magical day for us. My children went back to school. Although I have to say it was a little anticlimactic because one of my children, the child that I most wanted to be back on campus, my special needs child, was sick. Of all the days and all the year to get sick, it was this day, which is kind of funny. We have a special guest for you today. Her name is Michelle Wenger, and I'm excited to have you listen into this conversation because she is a fellow coach. She has, over the last year, transformed her own life and is excited to share her journey with you, but most importantly, to serve you. She has a daughter with Dandy Walker malformation, and Michelle has been living as a special needs mom and really working in her own life to become somebody that is able to show up for herself and for her daughter. I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation. Let's get started. Michelle, I am so glad and excited to have this conversation with you. Welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here as well. I just can't wait to have an amazing conversation with you.
Likewise. And she's coming to us all the way from Canada. This is an international conversation, which I think is very fun. I was just telling Michelle how this podcast is now ranking 169th on the Apple Podcasts in Canada. And that is, it may not mean a lot to all y'all, but I'm very excited about it.
That's super
We're on
exciting.
the charts.
Super exciting. We need you here in Canada.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, why don't you tell the listeners in your own words a little bit about how you identify as a special needs mom?
Well, for me, as a special needs mom, it kind of took me for a whirlwind, actually. Like I wasn't expecting, as we all don't, right? We never expect to have to go through this journey, right? So for me, it kind of just sent me on a whirlwind, and I was like, okay, what am I doing now? Like, how am I going to, attack this, right? And for me, it kind of came at a time where I wasn't in the best spot in my life either. So, that fear of like knowing that I'm not really where I want or need to be mentally, and then bringing a child into, the picture, get alone with one with special needs, it was very overwhelming for me. But, I kind of shifted into that mommy line, and I started advocating and trying to figure out what was going on with her, because for the first year and a half, we had no clue, right? We kind of had that initial mommy like feeling that something wasn't right. She started missing milestones and stuff like that. It was really challenging, but at the same time, it was actually it's been one of the most amazing and like beautiful journeys and things that's ever happened to me, because if I feel like if I didn't go through this, and I'm not continuing going through this, it wouldn't have helped me find myself, right? Because it really was the catalyst that started my self-discovery and my self-development journey for myself. So I see it as a blessing, even though the blessing is definitely hard. It can be very challenging, right? But now I'm kind of in a spot where I worked on myself, I worked on my mindset, and I'm starting to show up for myself, not just giving everything I have to her and just exhausting myself, right? Realizing that I need to first take care of myself so that I could be the best support for her, because I knew our journey wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be quote unquote normal, whatever normal is. But so really it challenged me and it changed me in such great ways that I would change, obviously, her diagnosis for her, but it wouldn't change what has taught me and what it's given me and how it's actually healed me in a lot of ways. So,
yeah, that actually is a really beautiful explanation. That last thing you said, I would change her diagnosis for her, but I wouldn't change like what it has brought you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never heard it put so beautifully, because I guess I would say that's exactly it. Like in a heartbeat, I would change what's happened for my son. I would put like all my cards back and say, I'll draw another straw.
Yeah.
Because it's got to be better than this.
Yes.
I'll take my chances. But then I also am like, well, I don't want to throw away all the stuff that I've gotten, like who I have become as a result. And so I think you just put it so beautifully. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to dive into a little bit more is you said that you kind of started from a baseline that wasn't like already that great when you became a special needs mom. Are you willing to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Like, so for me, I experienced a lot of different traumas and stuff growing up, and, I was young, right? So you don't realize how those are manifesting internally, right? You're kind of just taking it day by day, not aware that you're numbing, you're buffering your emotions, you're not dealing with them. And I never really had that example for me of showing me how to do that. So I really had to find that on my own. So basically, when I received my daughter's diagnosis, it was kind of that, like I said, that catalyst for like, okay, all these traumas now from my past are starting to resurface, and I'm starting to become a very, very hyper aware of them. Whereas before I was, but I just kind of kept on pushing them to side. Let's just numb and buffer, avoid at all costs, right? But I,
yes, but then exactly. I mean, no, right. I mean, yes, no.
You want to, but I didn't know at that time that wasn't the right thing, right? At that time, I was like, well, I don't want to feel this. So I'm just going to shove it on down, and I'm just going to go on, and I'm going to watch myself some TV. I'm going to grab a bag of chips or whatever it may be, right? You go into those like numbing modes. So that was me basically for 20 years of my life, actually, up until I had my daughter. Because at a very young age, like I said, I had gone through some trauma, right? So for me, it made me really have to step up and face, what I had been through, because I knew. And, in the past, my mom also had, when I was younger, struggled with like severe anxiety, depression, in and out of like, the hospital and stuff like that a lot. Right. So for me, as soon as I started feeling those emotions, it triggered me thinking back to, well, I don't want to put my child through that. She already has enough on her plate. And I know, like, in no way have any like hatred for my mom. I love my mom. She did the best she could with what she did. And I can so understand that now, being a mom, right? Especially a mom when you're dealing with any type of anxiety or overwhelm or anything on top of the special needs mom journey, right? It's kind of like it's a lot, right? So for me, it kind of just took me to this place of I need to be strong, and I want to break that generational curse of not dealing with things and avoiding. And I want to break that because I need to be strong for my daughter. So it kind of started with just, it started in a lot of different areas, but the thing that it started for me was I'm going to start listening to a podcast. That's kind of where it started for me. I'm going to start listening to a podcast, and I'm going to put as much good information in my brain as I can. And I'm going to see where this goes. And it's still not perfect, right? I still have my good and my bad days, even now being a mindset and personal development coach. But now the difference is I've cultivated this self-awareness around my triggers. I've learned how to deal with my emotions and how, your thoughts, like I don't know if you've heard of the thought model, right? Where it's like your circumstances, your thoughts, your feelings, right? It's like when I first heard that, I'm like, how have I not known that my whole life, right? Like it makes things seem so much more like you have more control, right? So
yeah, exactly.
For me, that's kind of where it started. And I got to this point where I'm like, I want to calm the chaos in my own life, because there was so much. And I saw the chaos in my mom's life growing up and how that affected things with me and my sisters and stuff, right? So I'm like, I need to calm the chaos in my own life so that my daughter doesn't have to calm the chaos in her life older and not know how to deal with her emotions, because being in the special needs world is not going to cater to her, right? And if I'm not strong and I'm not there to give her everything that I can, 100% of me, and teach her how to deal with emotions and stuff, because we're dealing with behavioral issues with special needs parenting, right? A lot of us do. And if I was where I was like a few years ago, like there's no way I could handle that. I would have been like triggered. I would have been in my room, suppressed some more, right? So I'm kind of going off on a tangent now. I'm like, what did you even ask me at the beginning?
Well, I want to, I love it. I was like, this girl can go. I like it. You have such good things to say. It's amazing. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is how you do process your emotions. Okay. So the episode that would have aired, so actually it aired last week, was called The Vicious Cycle of Overwhelm. And in that episode, I actually kind of, shared my own experience of processing my own emotion of overwhelm. So this is going to come out a little bit separately, but it is a topic that comes up all the time. And I would love to get your take on it, your experience of processing your own emotions, and just to kind of hear you speak a little bit about that.
Well, for me, basically, the first thing was I needed to become aware that I had control over those things, because at the time when I was not aware of it, it felt like everything was just happening to me, that I had no control over it. This was just kind of my lot in life. This is how it was going to be, right? This is just who I am. But I really started to notice that and cultivate a self-awareness around it when I started learning about the thought model and listening to podcasts and personal development stuff. And it started to just learning about those things. It started to, like I said, cultivate the self-awareness for myself that I have control over those things, and that, my circumstances do not have to control me, and that I can control them in a way, right? I can control the way I think about what's going on. So for me, it was really starting to do a lot of perspective shifting, starting to get out of that victim mode that everything's happening to me, starting to really focus on things happening for me. So when emotions come up for me, something that I like to do is I just sit with it for a minute. I don't let myself try to get too into the emotion. Like if I'm feeling upset about something, I try to recognize it. Sometimes I'll just step away and just go have a few minutes to myself. And a strategy that works for me is I just picture the thought going up into a little balloon or a cloud, and I picture it just kind of passing by and going away, and breathing really helps me. Like breathing techniques really helps me just to kind of calm myself down, because I suffered from extreme anxiety. So it's easy for me to go into like heart palpitations. Oh my God, this emotion, because old habits die hard, right? I automatically want to go into that, like, oh, avoid. And so for me, as soon as I feel like that emotion comes up and I want to go to that avoidance and I want to go to whatever I might have in the past to buffer, I just stop and I give myself a couple minutes before I automatically go to that. And giving yourself some time, I feel like, is super helpful, because, you know, it starts to train your brain that that's not what you have. You don't have to always go for that. And you can stop and you can sit with it for a minute. And it's okay to feel emotions. Like, it's weird. It would be weird if we were all happy all the time, right? Like, it's not normal. And I feel like people feel that that's normal. And that's why people feel like there's something wrong with them. Because they're like, they see social media, they see everything out there, and they're like, everybody's so happy. And it's like, no. And I feel like things are getting better. People are being more real these days, right?
Yeah, I think it is funny, the idea that I think a lot of us think, I want to be happier. I want to be happier. But then we don't realize that we don't always want to choose happiness. Like the idea of like, well, if somebody that you love dies, like you actually want to feel sad. You want to feel devastated in that moment. You don't want to feel happy. And so I think actually even taking the pressure of like, we don't even always want to feel happy, but we do want to feel happy at least some of the time, or we want to feel peace at least some of the time. So one word that you've used that I'm familiar with, but I want to make sure that our listeners are familiar with, is buffering. So when you say buffering, do you have an example, or what do you mean by that?
For me, it's just another word for avoidance, right? Okay. So when something comes up that's hard for you to deal with, whether it be an emotion or a circumstances that creates a feeling or emotion, that you tend to go towards what's going to make you feel comfortable in that moment, or a false pleasure, right? Like we think that, oh, if I just go and watch TV and numb it out, or eating or whatever, something just to give you that quick like hit to the brain of like, let's feel better and let's not feel this emotion. So for me, that was what I would do. You know, it's like, I'm going to go and eat some chocolate or whatever it may be, right? Or read something. So that's, to me, it's like you're buffering when you're not dealing with the emotion, and instead you're going for false pleasures instead. So
good. That's a really great explanation deeper into it. Thank you for that. I want to highlight the way that you describe dealing with emotions is that I want everyone to notice, like, there was a lot of different ways that you described that you process your emotions. And I'm going to give a couple examples of my own. And the reason I want to point this out is because more and more I am seeing that this is something that, like, we just didn't learn how to do this when we all grew up. It wasn't common day language. It wasn't common day practice. And that we had like 5 emotions. There was like sadness, anger, fear, happy, and joy. Maybe you occasionally got to feel stupid or embarrassed, but but we didn't really have, like, there's not even a lot of language that a lot of us even know about emotions or feelings. So the other day, I'll just share a couple experiences just to kind of also give our listeners even more tangible experience of what it's like to experience an emotion. So I got an email on this last Saturday morning, and I just felt disappointed, right? Like, so I heard some news, and then I was bummed, right? And so I noticed that, and I didn't necessarily do anything. But then on this particular Saturday morning, I was like trying to clean my house from the chaos of the week before. And so I kept doing the cleaning of the house, and I kind of noticed, I'm like, wow, you're kind of like a little bit frantic. Like, we were really like a lot of energy in the cleaning. And then I just recognized, oh my gosh, like, I think I'm really feeling this disappointment. And for me, what that looked like is just actually allowing it, be like, I'm disappointed. This is what, and I literally in my head repeated it over and over again. This is disappointment. This is disappointment. Because I didn't feel horrible, right? It wasn't like I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is the worst thing of my life ever. It was just like this little subtleness of like, I'm disappointed, right? But I could still go on with my life. I didn't have to go into my room and like really like meditate about my disappointment. I just had to allow the experience of having that, acknowledging the space that that disappointment wanted to take up. And I just kept acknowledging it and it dissipated. And I can think back to the event and be like, oh yeah, that happened. And like, yeah, it was disappointing, but it's not a big deal. Right. It was like, it allowed it to pass through.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other times, and actually even in the podcast that I recorded last week, whereas I was feeling like complete overwhelm. And in that case, I needed to like do full on timeout, shut my room or shut my door, lock it, and like nobody can talk to me. Mommy is processing her emotion.
Yeah.
And sometimes it looks like that, right? And I guess, and with what you have given and as an example, and just those two quick that I recalled, there's literally no right or wrong way to do it. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, let's just all do it. The other thing I want to point out, just because of the conversations that I've had today with a couple different clients, is that most of us think that processing our emotion is going to take up a lot of time, space, and energy. Right. And so we don't like, that's one of the reasons we think we should not, and we avoid.
Yeah.
It's like our brain convinces us that it's actually harder to feel the emotion than it is to actually feel it. And so this is a belief that I know that I even get stuck up on a little bit, like, I don't want to deal with that right now. I just want to put that out there for people to think, wow, like, what do I think it's going to be like to process my own emotion? And so I don't know if you can think back to like before you actually had facility with us, like, what did you think it was going to be like to process your own emotion?
Yeah, honestly, I could, like, when I was in the thick of it, I was so overwhelmed that just thinking of one more thing that I had to like do, whether it be process emotions, focus on myself, whatever it was, that thought to me was just too overwhelming. It's like my brain couldn't take in anymore at that time. I didn't have the capacity at that point. So to me, thinking about having to deal with my emotions was very overwhelming. So it's like, well, I don't want to feel that way. I already feel overwhelmed, right? So I'm like, why do I want to add that into it, right? So for me, it was just the feeling of overwhelm. And I think when you don't really know how to, it's even more overwhelming, right? Once you realize that, like you said, it doesn't have to be like a huge process, or that all of a sudden you're going to do this one thing and all your emotions are going to be perfectly balanced for the rest of your life. No, it's like, it's a day-to-day practice, right? And like, it doesn't have to take long, and it can be different for everybody. Sometimes even just writing the emotion out on a piece of paper, right? Getting it out of your brain and just being like, I feel this way today because whatever, right? Just getting out of your brain, even for 2 seconds. I have a whiteboard up, and it's like, I have so many boards and calendars and this and that, that I'll even write down feeling whatever today, sad, right? And then it's like, I look back at that later, I'm like, oh, I was feeling sad earlier. And then I can be like, oh, because maybe I was filling out this form for my daughter this morning. It took me back to something, right? So just be able to recognize those feelings and going even back to them by writing it down, because maybe you're just in the chaos of running to appointment and feel that. Even just keeping like a little journal in your purse or like a mini notepad, and it's like you just write down, brain dump it all out, your feelings, and just creates more space in your brain that you're not holding so much in your mind, and it creates more space to allow you to have more capacity, I guess, to then deal with those emotions. So for me, I would just say it doesn't have to be overwhelming, because I know that's how I felt at the beginning.
Yeah. So let's dig in if we can. Let's dig into a little bit about what got you from the place of like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is too overwhelming, to where you are now. Because clearly you've had some major shifts. You've described what you were feeling before as like you were drowning and no one could hear your screams. And I really love that visual picture that you've provided. And I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you were coming from. And you said, I was waiting and waiting for someone to come and pull me out. But yet nobody came, as you know.
Yeah.
So can you think back to feeling that, or to being in that place? What was the thing that actually had you hope or believe that it could be different?
Well, for me, like I was in a deep, deep place of feeling like I had no control over things. And, it was just so overwhelming. And I did feel like I was always waiting for something to fix me, right? Whether it be an outer circumstance, maybe it's shopping, maybe it's a person, maybe whatever that may be. And I finally just got to a point, I don't know, I just had this like full on meltdown one day. I call it my spiritual awakening, but it was like a full on meltdown in the shower. Like, why is this happening? It's like almost just like it was the most horrible feeling, but at the same time, it was like this weight was lifted off my shoulder. And I'm a spiritual person, so I was praying a lot about it. And I feel like kind of just God just came to me in that moment in that shower and said, you got this. You're stronger than you think you are. And I got this feeling of like, just a calmness came over me. And that's like a big reason why Calm Her Chaos came for me, because I felt this calmness come over me. And I'm like, I do have this. I've been through a lot. I can do this. And just that little seed of like hope in my brain started to cultivate for me, and it started to grow. But it didn't happen overnight. I still had really bad days. And then I would be like, why God, like, why is this happening? I thought I was going to, be on the right track now. But for me, it just started with I read a book called The Compound Effect. I don't know.
Oh, I love that book. Good old Darren Hardy.
Yes. And that really and the one thing too, like those two books really like got to me. And I was like, hey, it doesn't, because I was like an all or nothing type of person, right? It's like, I'm going to make a list. I want to change this. I want to change that. And I'm going to add 15 things to my plate when I'm already overwhelmed. So for me, I just really,
I would totally do that too.
Yeah. Like I'm going to do
That sounds like a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I'm like, oh, I think I might've been doing that this morning.
I know. I still catch myself doing that too. Right. But I think that really just gave me an idea of, okay, I don't have to do it all right now. Right. Yeah. Like I'm a perfectionist, recovering OCD. Like I'm just like control freak. Right. So I'm like, hey, I don't have to figure it out all right now. What is one thing that I can focus on? So that one thing for me at that time, as I started listening to podcasts, like I had said earlier, a few different podcasts, Joel Osteen, Rob Dial, those are two of the ones I'm like, if Joel Osteen and Rob Dial had a baby and their baby had special needs, what would they tell the world? Right. And I was starting to think, I was starting to think about all those things, and I just putting all the good information in, because you also got to remember, what are you allowing into your brain, right? Like, what are you consuming? Not just by what you're eating, but what are you consuming? So I shut off my TV. I started like putting more time into like my own development, listening to podcasts, taking different courses, right? Whatever interested me. I love art. So painting, drawing, whatever I could do just to start like taking some time for myself and not feeling guilty about it. Because as a mother in general, the guilt is real, right? When you're a special needs mom, the guilt is like extra, right? So for me, just learning how to take some space for myself. And once I started doing that, it's like little kind of like Legos of bricks of confidence started building up for myself. Because for me, it's like the past, I'd always be like, well, why would I start something new? Because I know I'm not going to fulfill that. I know I'm not going to complete that. Right. So you kind of have that self-doubt. So for me, as soon as I started taking action and started waiting for action to like show up at my doorstep, I started to build that confidence in myself. And that's kind of really where it started. And like, that was about a year ago for me, where I really had that like breakdown and really started thinking about everything. And it just made such a big difference. And that kind of led me to where I am now. And I believe if you just can take one step of action and one day at a time, and you're not living too much in the future and not too much in the past, whereas people that are overwhelmed and anxious tend to do, right? We live so much and that we're not focused on the present moment. So for me, like just really being in the present moment and taking that time for myself was huge in my, I guess, self-awakening, as you might want to call it.
I think the power of the present moment has been so huge for me as well. I know that when my brain wants to be like, there's a lot of problems and like, you should definitely feel overwhelmed. One of the things I do to recenter myself is really just to focus on the thought or the belief that like, I have everything I need for today, or my child is healthy today, and really like center that I don't have to figure out tomorrow or today. Like, it's just the decisions right in front of me today, just the small actions I'm going to take today. And I love that you, that was something that sounds like very much for you, that was pivotal for you, is just really allowing yourself to take those small actions and to also just focus on being present in the moment. Yeah, it was huge. It doesn't have to be a big, huge thing, right? Just little tiny things that start adding up to like, really, and it's always, I think it's a lifetime process too, right? Like you're always going to grow, you're always going to learn, you're always going to become more aware of different things that maybe you're doing, things that are holding you back, things that are propelling you forward, right? So I think it's an evolving process for everybody, and it's just a lifelong journey, but I think that that's a beautiful thing as well. So Yeah. And I want to put this on a compound effect. I haven't read the other book that you mentioned, so you can add anything from that one if you'd like to. But the compound effect is definitely a recommended book. I listened to it probably, and it's, gosh, probably a little while ago. But one of the things that sticks out to me is, so his idea is basically it's the small things that add up every day. And I think it's like, it's like 37% is a number that sticks in my head, and maybe you'll know the stat, but basically it's like, if you improve yourself, is it every day? Then you're like going to be 37% better at anything at the end. And I have no idea how that math works out, but
yeah, I don't know the math. I'm not
I'm
a
gonna have
numbers
to
person.
call my husband, who's a math guy, in on for that one. But anyhow, that doesn't matter as much as the concept behind it. And he gives an example of like, it's like the little things of like putting mayonnaise on your sandwich doesn't matter really if you do it one day or not, but doing it over the course of the year could equal losing, it was like 18 pounds or something nutso that you're like,
Yeah.
wow, like you don't realize the little things, really little things. So one of the things that what I took from what you were sharing about the shift that you had, that moment in the shower, it sounds like it went from you thinking and believing that like this was really horrible. It's like you somehow got that glimmer of hope and that belief, I can do this.
Yeah.
What I heard you say, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like if you take that thought and you apply little actions with I can do this, it's like, can you even only imagine what
Yeah.
what the result is, right? Like in your life, and then in the people that you work with lives, and of course in your daughter's life, and how you show up for your daughter. Anything else to add, since I know you referenced that book as well?
Well, yeah, for me, it was just like that book really gave me perspective shift because, the Mayo analogy, right? It's like, you don't think about those things, right? You think that, change and success is just one big magical moment, but it's not, right? It's actually a lot of little moments that we build up. We build up over time, and we build this confidence within ourselves, and it just keeps compounding, right? He talks about, I don't know the numbers either. I use my creative side of my brain. I'm not a numbers girl. But he gave the statistic of the penny, right? The penny compound effect, where it's like you have the penny, and if you just keep on doubling that penny for X amount of days, eventually you have $1 million or whatever the number was. I don't know the exact number, but it really helped to open my eyes to just thinking about the little things more, and having that perspective shift on, those little things do add up, and it's not just going to happen overnight. And once you can come to that understanding, it really takes the pressure off, I feel like, a little bit too, where you're not feeling like, oh, I need to change and it's going to happen tomorrow, right? Like it doesn't happen like that. And even when you are changing, you are very aware, like you're still going to have those days where maybe you're off, or those old habits come back, and because they, old habits die hard, right? So they're still going to come back. But the difference is now you have the tools and the awareness. And I think that self-awareness is the number one thing that people need to cultivate, because if you're not aware of what's happening and how your emotions are controlling you or your thoughts, then there's no place to start, right? Like, so I feel like self-awareness is like the number one key that everybody, like Rob Dial always says, he's like, that's like the number one superpower to give everybody in the world, is self-awareness, because if you don't know, you don't know, right?
Yeah. If you don't, it's like you can't change something that you're not aware of exists.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. And I think you said it really beautifully. So I want to shift gears just a tiny bit. And I just kind of want to get like a little bit more, I guess I want to just turn a little bit to kind of get more insight to like what's going well in your life, and maybe some areas that you want to grow, just because I think that it's important for other moms to have people to relate to be like, oh, I'm totally normal, because she too is experiencing this. So why don't we start with what you feel like you're just absolutely nailing in your life right now?
I think for me, it's actually just showing up for myself and choosing myself, because I'm a fixer, I'm a helper, I'm a healer, I'm an empath, right? Like I feel like I always want to fix and go out and help everybody, right? So in doing that, there's nothing wrong with it, but then I kind of forgot about myself, right? So for me, the biggest thing has been just taking that time for myself and knowing that I'm worth that time, and that I don't have to feel guilty about it, and that the world won't stop spinning. My daughter will be okay. We're still going to get everything done, and mommy can take some time for herself. So I feel like just not having that guilt around taking time for yourself and working on yourself is like a great place to start.
That's awesome to hear. And what about an area that you feel like you notice is not going very well in your life right now?
For me, I feel like I've talked about old habits dying hard, right? So it's like those old habits, because it's been 20 years of avoiding and buffering and stuff, right? So a year in, it's not going to be like perfect yet, right? So I feel like for me, it's just not letting those like that negative self-talk or disbelief come back, because it's so easy for that to drag you back in, right? So for me, it's been really just aware of that. And that's why I hired my own coach too, is help kind of give me that little kick in the butt. Cause I think everybody needs somebody to help guide them. And it's like, they kind of, when you hire somebody or hire a coach, I feel like they kind of collapse time for you, right? They help to fast forward your transformation.
I totally agree that old habits can die hard. And I'm so glad that you were willing to share that. So thank you so much. And one of the things that has been coming up, and actually I was working with somebody that I worked with on and off for the last couple of years today. And so she's come like so far. Like we joked today, like she was like her version 1.0 before, and now she's like moving on to the next version, because her story was that she shouldn't still be dealing with basically any of the issues that she was having, because she's already done so much work. And that thought for her was keeping her in judgment, because she thought, I shouldn't still be feeling this way. And I there's a coaching term, I don't know if you've heard it, she hadn't yet, but like it's called new level, new devil, to where,
No, I haven't.
yeah. So good. Like I'm sharing it with the world today. New level, new devil, right? So it's like when you decided that you were going to change your life and to like shift your relationship with being a special needs mom, you obviously changed. Right. And like over the last year, you've described your transformation, and like now you're going out and you're like sharing this with everybody, and you're helping other women, like amazing. And as you have basically achieved this new level of you're going to get all new obstacles coming at you. Right. You're like, yeah, I totally feel you. You're going to get all the new obstacles coming at you. And in her case, she was making it mean that like something was wrong, that she shouldn't still be having this experience. And I wanted to bring that to light, because I think it's so important just to notice, oh, that's like our judgment coming up again. We don't have to go and judge ourselves for how we're feeling. We can just allow the feeling. And I think also recognizing obstacles for what they are. Right. It's just our brain's very clever way of trying to stop us. Right. You're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So I'm interested to hear freshly from your experience. And as you're talking to other moms as well, what do you think are the obstacles that moms have to actually stepping into action to help themselves?
I feel like it really comes down to maybe just a lack of belief in themselves, that worthiness. They don't feel like maybe they were worth it or that they can. So I feel like it just really that confidence within yourself. I know that was the case for me. It's like I just kind of never had that confidence in myself that I was worth more and that I could do more with my life. I was always kind of I kept myself in this little box, right? And I found that once I started really like taking action and small steps of action, that's really what really helped me. And for me as well, I wanted that language not to be around my daughter. I wanted her to feel like she was enough. So I need to show up for myself, and she needs to see that mommy believes in herself and that she can step out into something maybe she's not so comfortable in, right? Like starting a coaching business for me is the thing that I want to do. And it's amazing and it's a beautiful, but it scares the crap out of me all at the same time. Right. So like being on Instagram, putting yourself out there on social media, getting up and talking to people, even with doing this with you right now, a year ago, there's no way I would have thought that this is where I would be, right? That my brain couldn't even see that because it was so stuck in the chaos and the past and the trauma and the things that I wasn't dealing with. So I feel like once you start dealing with those things, like things just start to become more clear and clear. And once you start to get a clear vision too of where you want to go with your life and some things you want to do. And for me, that was just adding value to people, helping as many people as I can, because I don't want people to feel the way I did for as long as I did, because it's horrible. Nobody wants to be there, right? So if I can fast forward that for someone, that's kind of my goal in life, is to help people get through that and not be stuck in it, sit in it for so long. Right. I feel like it's so easy to get stagnant in life, and nobody wants to be stagnant. That's not a nice word. Right.
Yeah. So, nobody is like, I'd really like to be stagnant forever.
Yeah.
Most people, maybe some people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was so beautifully said. I really love the connection that you brought to what you're doing for yourself. And what I hear is basically acknowledging that you are enough, and what that means for how you can show up for your daughter, and not just like show up for her, but really what we know about raising people is that whether we teach somebody something or not, through our like actual intention, that they're going to learn from us on how we're being with ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying sometimes.
It is.
Yeah. Like, oh no. I wish I could control it all, but I can't. And
you can't.
It's such a bummer. Okay. But really for you, I love how you really brought like that you acknowledged that you brought it to life, saying like, me showing up this way for myself is going to be, it is this kind of a coach speak, but like the clearing or the opening for my daughter to create this for herself. I just really think that it's a point for us to focus on, because I know that, yes, I want to do it for myself. And yes, I want to do it for my kids, all of them, not just my special needs child. So thank you for sharing that. And as we start to kind of wind up a little bit, I just want to invite you, if there's anything else on your heart or mind that you want to share with the special needs mom community, what would you like to share?
Well, for me, I just really want to just reach out and just tell them that they are worthy, that they are enough, that they can do hard things because they do them every single day. Being a special needs parent is challenging, right? It's not easy, right? So for anybody, it doesn't matter if you had the mental capacity, maybe you haven't been through traumas, it's still going to be hard for you, right? So to me, I'm really speaking to the women that maybe have a lot of trauma, maybe anxiety, overwhelm, mental health issues that they were dealing with before they stepped into this journey. And I want them to know that they can get through that, and that they can cultivate the life that they want, and that it is possible. And I know sometimes it doesn't feel like it when you're in the midst of the storm and the chaos. It doesn't feel like there's any hope. And I know that's how I felt, but I want people to know that there is, and that it's not going to happen overnight. And you have to be realistic with yourself and with it. And, not get hard on yourself if you have a bad day, because you're still going to have those days, right? But the beautiful thing is that once you kind of cultivate a mindset and grow yourself, you'll be able to grow your capacity, and you'll be able to deal with those things better. And they're not going to eat you up for so long, right? You're not going to sit in your quote unquote shit for as long, right? Because you're taking action. And I think that that's just the biggest thing, right? And I think that we all need some sort of hope and guidance, and someone that maybe has been there before to help kind of fast forward that for you, so you're not in that space for so long. And that's just my passion, and my goal in life is to help as many women, special needs moms, that I can, to know that they have that power within themselves, and they don't have to feel guilty for taking that time for themselves, and that they too can have the life that they want despite their circumstances. So
amazing. And I'll just, the line that really sticks out to me is that like, you can do hard things, you're doing them every day. And I think I've talked a lot about this on my social media, and kind of bringing light to like what special needs moms have to do at baseline, regardless of if your child's diagnosis is purely like a neurocognitive diagnosis, or if it's a genetic disorder, or if it's cancer, like all of it. All of it, the way that you have to show up for your child already indicates that you have the capacity to do hard things. And so I want moms to use that to build their belief in themselves, like what you got in this moment of the shower of, I can do it. I can do it. And that it doesn't have to be like moving a mountain. It can be, I can take a shower today without feeling guilty or whatever it is, right? That's a random example. Okay, well,
I can drink a hot coffee.
There you go. I like that. That's a way better example. I appreciate you throwing that one out there, saving me a little bit. But I just so appreciated the conversation, and I have a feeling that we're going to be bouncing a lot of ideas off of each other in the future as colleagues in this work. I just honor your journey and really I'm excited to see you essentially in the world of supporting this community. Obviously, it's my heart as well. And I think we need all the people to join all the causes to change the way that it has gone for the story for special needs moms. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be crappy. It can actually be amazing, but we don't have to get there alone.
Yeah,
so
we don't.
With that, I'm going to end our episode and we will see you guys next week. If you're new to the show, there's something I really want to make sure that you know about. And if you've been listening for a little bit, you will have heard me talk about a group coaching program that I opened, I don't know, let's call it a little over a month ago. Well, the group that I initially started is well underway. And I got to say, we're having an absolute blast. Even just yesterday, one of the women in the group posted a picture in our private group where she was celebrating something that she had taken on and had accomplished. That was really meaningful for her. And just the energy that it brought even to my day as I got to be part of that and the ongoing conversation, it was so much fun. It was so much fun. Just like Michelle talked about in this episode, we don't have to get there alone. We don't have to move through the challenges that come at us as special needs moms alone. And from talking to enough of you, I know that you're being faced with obviously real challenges and you get really stuck in not knowing how to navigate that and not really having the tools and yet really desiring to have a different experience. You want to access and experience having some peace. Not even just managing the chaos, but actually having the chaos go away and having it be something that you know can exist, but not at the very present all the time, every day in your life. So I created this group just for you, for this community, and I'm enrolling in a new group. I'm actually filling a new group. I'm doing it a little differently than I did last time, but it makes it more accessible on an ongoing basis. And so if you're listening to this podcast, if you hear these words coming into your earphones, then you have the opportunity to be part of this group. Just like Michelle talked about in this episode, it's a very small action. The small action I'm encouraging you to take today is just to inquire, to send me a quick message. The show notes on the player that you're listening on have easy links where you just have to click it, send me a quick note. Easy peasy. We schedule from there. I can give you all the information. But what I'll tell you, this group is designed for you to meet you where you're at in getting you both the coaching and the reflection and awareness so that you understand what hasn't been working or what has been creating the results that you have in your life. But more importantly, it's going to give you the tools to create a different experience. Community is a critical part of this group because I think as we special needs moms have been doing this alone and have commonly experienced this isolation, this otherness, this lack of belonging, that being part of this group and doing this work, I think really, really not necessarily expedites, but it really deepens the work and it helps us to see what's possible when we're working in this type of community. The other thing is it's designed to fit around your life. I have some ways of making it accessible, even if you have appointments that come up. And this happens with all the things that we're managing with all the therapies. And so I've designed it in a way that it really works for that. I really hope that you'll consider taking this one small step to shift something for your own life, to give yourself something so that you can, like Michelle was talking about, move out of the overwhelm, away from the chaos, and into and towards a life that you love, even when we have these real and ongoing challenges that are part of our life as special needs mom. I look forward to connecting with you. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.